Hey, I'm Hannah. Welcome to Twilight Rewrite, where we are rewriting the Twilight series. This started as a way to show you guys the application of the editing and writing tips that I've given on this channel, but now I'm just having too much fun to stop. If this is your first video, you can check out a playlist of the first 8 chapters to catch up. If you don't want to, just take note that Bella has a knife, Jacob is Jasmine, Eric is Erica, Charlie is a respected adult, Lauren is a mythology nerd, and all the characters are allowed to say the F word. Also, I might kill Edward. I haven't decided. Shh, spoilers. By the way, I'm a writer, and you can find my books and Skillshare classes on writing linked in the description. Also, if you think that this series is like mean to Stephanie Meyer, I just uploaded a video where I do the same thing to my own writing. Also, her net worth is $120 million, so probably be okay. Okay, chapter 9, Theory. That didn't work. I just lifted my desk thinking it was going to lower me so that I'd be more in frame. It didn't, in case you were wondering. Can I ask just one more? I pleaded as Edward accelerated much too quickly down the quiet street. He didn't seem to be paying any attention to the road. He sighed. One, he agreed, his lips pressed together in a cautious line. So something I noticed about Stephanie's writing style is that, like, there's nothing wrong with this, with the actual content, but the way that she's arranged it makes it more difficult to read than it needs to be. So we could just do, he sighed, his lips pressed together in a cautious line. We could spell cautious correctly. 1. There's also something to be said for how you format dialogue and where you put the actual dialogue. So if you say what the character said and then you give a bunch of description, sometimes it messes up like the timing of how you're reading it with the next line of dialogue. Sometimes it's good because it indicates that there's like been a stretch of time since one person said something and the other person responded, but I don't think that was intentional here. So I think that will read better. I think I'm gonna take out just there also. Can I ask one more? I don't really like pleaded either. Just say I asked. I don't think she needs to be that desperate. Well, you said you knew I hadn't gone to the bookstore and that I had gone south, and I was just wondering how you knew that. I don't think she needs to be this hesitant. This new Bella that we fabricated who carries a knife. You said you knew I hadn't gone to the bookstore. I'm just gonna take all that out. How? He looked away, deliberating. He can look like he's deliberating, but she can't say it so confidently. But we could give like a bit of description that lets us know that he's deliberating. Like, he looked away, tugging his cheek between his teeth. I thought we were past all the evasiveness, I grumbled. He almost smiled. I'm gonna take that out because she does too much work in her description. This is supposed to be really tense, so she's going to overly describe and explain that it's tense, but having stuff like this breaks up that tension, so she has to do double the work to remind us that this is a tense scene. So if we take that out and just don't have that positive interaction, then it can stay tense and we don't have to double back on everything. I haven't finished reading this scene, but she does that throughout the entire book, so I'm assuming that's what's going on. Fine then, I followed your son. I'm gonna take out fine then, because that's one of those things that you just don't actually say out loud. He looked at the road, giving me time to compose my face. How do you know that that's what he's doing? Also, if he already looked away from her, we just say he watched the road. I couldn't think of an acceptable response to that, but I filed it carefully away for future study. Shut up. I feel like she should respond to that. I wasn't ready to let him be finished, and now that he was finally explaining things. What if we had her like, what the fuck? And then I peeked at the dash to see how fast we were going, then eyed the road to calculate the toll hopping out would take on my body. We were going 75 and I wouldn't be able to leap past the asphalt. I just feel like she should be a little bit alarmed. I curled my fingers around the knife in my pocket. And when you didn't answer one of my first questions, I stalled. He looked at me with disapproval. Which one? How does it work? The mind reading thing. Can you read anybody's mind anywhere? How do you do it? Can the rest of your family? I felt silly asking for clarification on make-believe. I don't know what she believes and what she doesn't. I'm just gonna say didn't answer my other question. I stalled. I wanted to change the subject, but also wanted answers. This is just such a weird scene. I don't really know how to fix it. What does she want? He looked at me with disapproval. Which one? He looked at me with disapproval. I'm gonna just make this one piece of dialogue. How does it work? The mind reading thing, yeah, we know. Can you read anybody's mind anywhere? How do you do it? Can the rest of your family? It felt stupid, but the silence made me uncomfortable. Or it felt stupid, but I wasn't comfortable being silent in the car with him. I just think she should be a little bit alarmed. That's more than one, he pointed out. I simply intertwined my fingers and gazed at him, waiting. No, it's just me. Shut up. And I can't hear anyone anywhere. I have to be fairly close. The more familiar someone's voice is, the farther away I can hear them. So there's a lot of hesitation in the way that this information is being presented to the readers, but I don't think he would be that hesitant if he's already telling her shit, like he's doing it on purpose. More familiar I am with them, the farther away I can hear. But still, no more than a few miles. He paused thoughtfully. It's a little like being in a huge hall filled with people, everyone talking at once. It's just a hum, a buzzing of voices in the background until I focus on one voice, and then what they're thinking is clear. I'm gonna take that out until I focus on one. Most of the time, I tune it all out. It can be very distracting. Well, duh. Tune it out. And then it's easier to seem normal. He frowned as he said the word. When I'm not accidentally answering someone's thoughts rather than their words. I'm going to take out as he said the word because I don't like word and words wrapped that close together. Why do you think you can't hear me? I asked curiously. He looked at me, his eyes enigmatic. Shut up. I don't know, he murmured. The only guess I have is that maybe your mind doesn't work the same as the rest of theirs do, like your thoughts are on the AM frequency and I'm only getting FM. He grinned at me, suddenly amused. My mind doesn't work right. I'm a freak. The words bothered me more than they should, probably because his speculation hit home. I'd always suspected as much and it embarrassed me to have it confirmed. What if, like, I meant it as a joke, but it didn't really sound like one? We can just be subtler. We don't have to spoon feed everything every single time. I hear voices in my mind and you're worried that you're the freak. He laughed. Don't worry, it's just a theory. His face tightened. Which brings us back to you. I sighed. How to begin? Aren't we past all the evasions now? He reminded me softly. I don't know what their vibe is and I don't know what they think their vibe is, but they keep going back and forth between like him still not wanting her around, her still being afraid of him, but also they think that they're friends. Or they think that they're supposed to be acting like friends. I don't know what anyone wants. I looked away from his face for the first time, trying to find words. I happened to notice the speedometer. Holy crow! Shut up. Holy shit, I shouted. Slow down. What's wrong? He was startled, but the car didn't decelerate. You're going 100 miles an hour. I was still shouting. I shot a panicky glance out of the window, but it was too dark to see much. The road was only visible in the long patch of bluish brightness from the headlights. The forest along both sides of the road was like a black wall, as hard as a wall of steel if we veered off the road at that speed. I'm gonna take all of that out. Relax, Bella. He rolled his eyes, still not slowing. Are you trying to kill us? I demanded. We're not gonna crash. I tried to modulate my voice. Why are you in such a hurry? I always drive like this. He turned to smile crookedly at me. Keep your eyes on the road. I'm gonna take this out. One of the biggest things that makes this dialogue unrealistic is how everyone over-explains everything. That's not how people talk, and you can trust the reader to fill in the blanks. Nothing is being subtle here. We're not going to get confused. Keep your eyes on the road. I've never been in an accident, Bella. I've never gotten a ticket. He grinned and tapped his forehead. Built-in radar detector. Very funny, I fumed. Charlie's a cop. Remember, I was raised to abide by traffic laws. Besides, if you turn us into a Volvo pretzel around a tree trunk, you could probably just walk away. Probably, he agreed with a short, hard laugh, but you can't. He sighed, and I watched with relief as the needle gradually shifted toward 80. Happy? Okay, why would he not know that she would die if they crash? And if he's so confident that he won't crash, why would he slow down? Do you actually care about her survival or no? I hate driving slow, he muttered. This is slow? Enough commentary on my driving, he snapped. How are you this old and you cannot regulate your emotions at all? I'm still waiting for your latest theory. I bit my lip. He looked down at me, his honey eyes unexpectedly gentle. Okay, he snapped, but then they're unexpectedly gentle. Can we settle on a vibe? What do you want, Edward? I won't laugh, he promised. I'm more afraid that you'll be angry with me. Is it that bad? Pretty much, yeah. He waited. I was looking down at my hands, so I couldn't see his expression. Go ahead. His voice was calm. I don't know how to start, I admitted. Why don't you start at the beginning? You said you didn't come up with this on your own. No. What got you started? A book? A movie? He probed. No, it was Saturday at the beach. I risked a glance up at his face. He looked puzzled. I ran into an old family friend, Jacob Black, he continued. His dad and Charlie have been friends since I was a baby. He still looked confused. His dad is one of the Quileute elders. I watched him carefully. His confused expression froze in place. We went for a walk. I edited all my scheming out of the story. And he was telling me some old legends, trying to scare me, I think. He told me one. I hesitated. Go on, he said, about vampires. We saw the whole scene. Why do we have to have it rehashed? About vampires, I realized I was whispering. I couldn't look at his face now, but I saw his knuckles tighten convulsively on the wheel. Bitch. And you immediately thought of me, still calm. No, he mentioned your family. He was silent, staring at the road. I was worried suddenly, worried about protecting Jacob. He thought it was just a silly superstition, I said quickly. He didn't expect me to think anything of it. It didn't seem like enough. I had to confess. It was my fault. I forced him to tell me. Why? Lauren said something about you. She's trying to provoke me. And an older boy from the tribe said your family didn't come to the reservation. I haven't been editing it because I was hoping that I could just cut this. Do you need to go? Didn't realize she had an appointment. Go back and edit this, I guess. To make Edward more likable because he's completely insufferable. This is slow. We could have her reacting like she's scared and then he like tries to change the subject and be nice to her instead of being a dick. I tried to keep the tremor out of my voice, gripping both hands around the seatbelt at my shoulder. His voice was soft when he spoke again. So, your latest theory? I bit my lip. He looked down at me, his honey eyes unexpectedly gentle. Okay, see? Doesn't that make him seem less like a psychopath? I feel like we need to decide if he's like a monster who's very gentle on purpose or if he is really gonna serial kill her. Because those two vibes are constantly fighting with each other. And not in like a convincing, intriguing, complicated way. It's just like, okay, so you're a dick. Great. It's like, no, babe, I'm a dick, but I also want to emotionally manipulate you. I won't laugh, he promised. I'm more afraid that you'll be angry with me. Is it that bad? Pretty much, yeah. I shrugged. He waited. I was looking at my hands, so I couldn't see his expression. Go ahead. His voice was calm. Okay, I'm gonna take that out and then just have I shrugged. I don't know how to start. Take out I admitted. Why don't you start at the beginning? You said you didn't come up with this on your own. What got you started? A book, a movie? He probed. No, it was Saturday at the beach. This whole recap is already very, very dull, so I'm just gonna trim out what I can. Saturday at the beach, I risked a glance up at his face. He looked puzzled. I ran into an old family friend, Jasmine Black. Her dad and Charlie have been friends since I was a baby. He still looked confused. I watched him carefully. His confused expression froze in place. We get that he's confused. We went for a walk. I edited all my scheming out of the story. It's not that serious. You were just nice to someone for information. Okay, we went for a walk and she was telling me some old legends. We could say she told me some old legends. Trying to scare me, I think. She told me one. I hesitated. Go on, he said. About vampires? I have a little question mark there. I realized I was whispering. I couldn't look at his face now, but I saw his knuckles tighten on the wheel. And you immediately thought of me? His voice was still calm. No, he mentioned your family. She just thought it was a silly superstition, I said quickly. She didn't expect me to think anything of it. Didn't seem like enough to shift the blame from Jasmine. I had to confess. It was my fault. I forced her to tell me. There you go. Why? Lauren said something about you. She was trying to provoke me. And an older boy from the tribe said your family didn't come to the reservation. Only it sounded like he meant something different. So I got Jasmine alone. And tricked it out of her. I admitted, hanging my head. He startled me by laughing. I glared up at him. He was laughing, but his eyes were fierce, staring ahead. Tricked her how? He asked. I tried to flirt. It worked better than I thought it would. Disbelief colored my tone as I remembered. I'd like to have seen that, he chuckled darkly. And you accuse me of dazzling people. Poor Jasmine Black. Okay. I blushed and looked out my window into the night. What did you do then? He asked after a minute. Did some research on the internet. Okay, later on, we are going to go back. We're swapping out the internet research for Lauren information to give Lauren something to do and so that the research process isn't so embarrassing. By the way, every 5 chapters, we do a compilation edit over all of them just to update everything on Twitch. So follow me at twitch.tv/HannahLeeKidder if you want to watch it live. Did some research. Did that convince you? His voice sounded barely interested, but his hands were clamped hard onto the steering wheel. No, nothing fit. Most of it was kind of silly, and then I stopped. What? I decided it didn't matter, I whispered. It didn't matter? His tone made me look up. I had finally broken through his carefully composed mask. His face was incredulous with just a hint of the anger I'd feared. No, I said softly, it doesn't matter to me what you are. A hard, mocking edge entered his voice. You don't care if I'm a monster? If I'm not human? It's a little much, gonna be honest. No. He was silent, staring straight ahead again. His face was bleak and cold. You're angry, I sighed. I shouldn't have said anything. No, he said, but his tone was as hard as his face. I'll leave it. I'd rather know what you're thinking, even if what you're thinking is insane. Breathe, buddy. So I'm wrong again? I challenged. That's not what I was referring to. It doesn't matter, he quoted, gritting his teeth together. I'm right, I gasped. Does it matter? I took a deep breath. Not really, I paused, but I am curious. My voice, at least, was composed. He was suddenly resigned. What are you curious about? How old are you? This is very anticlimactic, to be honest. Like, they're just in a car. Where's the drama? It's just Edward being bitchy. 17, he answered promptly. And how long have you been 17? His lips twitched as he stared at the road. A while. Sometimes having dialogue tags, it makes you lose something. So a while, he admitted at last. Why don't we just say a while? And then if you're ending the line on that dialogue, you kind of have a second to sit with it. Does that make sense? So unless you're going to add like some significant kind of description afterward, a lot of the time ending that line with dialogue is going to be stronger. And a dialogue tag is just not strong. Dialogue tags are more like punctuation than the actual prose itself. So if you're putting too much into your dialogue tags, it just makes them stand out more. It's like if every time you put a comma, you drew attention to that comma. So a good way to clean up your prose is to think of your dialogue tags as something that's sort of invisible. Okay, I smiled. So like that's not a dialogue tag, that's giving us some description. The only reason that you should use dialogue tags is to let the reader know who's speaking. And if you can let them know without actually putting a dialogue tag, that's usually going to be better. So since we started a new paragraph and then we have Bella and what she's doing, we know that it's her saying it. Okay, I smiled, pleased that he was still being honest with me. He stared down at me with watchful eyes. We've seen him stare down at her a bunch of times already, much as he had before. Yeah, many times. When he was worried I would go into shock, I smiled wider in encouragement and he frowned. This is that thing again where like you can feel Stephenie Meyer writing it because I think the problem is she's almost writing from like an omniscient standpoint at all times. Because she always knows and remembers everything that happened and connects it all together for us. Whenever Bella probably wouldn't remember everything or connect everything as clearly. And it's good for everything that you write to be connected and make sense for the story. But it's just too much sometimes. Like this is over describing. I don't think any of that description is doing anything for us. So we could put something else. Okay, I smiled, pleased that he was still being honest with me. We have him staring at the road a bunch. We had his hands clenching on the wheel. So what else could we have to see more clearly what Edward's feeling? And then we can make Bella more interesting. Like, what could she be thinking about right now? So, like, his jaw flexed. I wondered if his teeth were real. Do vampires have dentists? Are their teeth frozen in the state they were when they were last alive, or do they all wear dentures? That's what I would be thinking about. So I started suddenly feeling insecure. How can you come out? How can you come out during the day? He laughed. Burned by the sun? Myth. Sleeping in coffins? Myth. He hesitated for a moment and a peculiar tone entered his voice. I can't sleep. It took me a minute to absorb that. At all? Never, he said, his voice nearly inaudible. He turned to look at me with a wistful expression. The golden eyes held mine. His golden eyes held mine and I lost my train of thought. I stared at him until he looked away. You haven't asked me the most important question yet. His voice was hard now. And when he looked at me again, his eyes were cold. If I were 109, I would have already gone to therapy. And I don't think it's too late for him to do so. This projection is a little much for me. Which one is that? You aren't concerned about my diet? He asked sarcastically. Oh, I murmured that. So we have this sentence ending in that, then this sentence ending in that. We don't need it. So I'll take it out right there. I'm also going to take it out here. Yes, that. It's right here again. His voice was bleak. Don't you want to know if I drink blood? I flinched. Well, Jacob said something about that. What did Jasmine say? Or what did she say? He asked flatly. She said you don't hunt people. She said your family wasn't supposed to be dangerous because you only hunted animals. I'm going to take out the first sentence because I feel like that's something she would want to avoid directly saying out loud. If I were trying to convince myself that a vampire was safe to date, I don't think I would say that they could be eating people. He said we weren't dangerous. His voice was deeply skeptical. Not exactly. He said you weren't supposed to be dangerous. I'm gonna get a little italics on supposed. But the Quileutes still didn't want you on their land just in case. He looked forward, but I couldn't tell if he was watching the road or not. How many times are we gonna get a description of if he was watching the road or not? Why don't we see him being being a vampire a little bit. So like he drifted into the other lane and I gripped my door handle even though there was no oncoming traffic. A moment later, I saw a raccoon mother and her babies slowly crossing the highway in the lane we were just in. Gently passed back over. Okay, so we're seeing that he's a vampire and he heard the little raccoon thoughts or whatever, knew that it was coming. And then we see that he cares about these living creatures. I just think it's better to see the stuff in application than to be told it over and over again. Since I added all this description, you usually want to have a dialogue tag before the dialogue if we don't know who's about to speak, or right after that first sentence. So I'll put, I tried to keep my voice even about not hunting people. The Quileutes have a long memory, he whispered. Oh, so was she right? Because that's about Jacob. I took it as a confirmation. I'll take that out. Don't let that make you complacent, though, he warned. They're right to keep their distance from us. We are still dangerous. I don't understand. We try, he explained slowly. We're usually very good at what we do. Sometimes we make mistakes. Me, for example, allowing myself to be alone with you. But he always does. I don't think it's a mistake if it's happened like 17 times. This is a mistake? I heard the sadness in my voice, but I didn't know if he could as well. A very dangerous one, he murmured. We were both silent then. I'm gonna take out Ben. I watched the headlights twist with the curves of the road. They moved too fast. It didn't look real. It looked like a video game. I'm gonna take out it didn't look real. It looked like a video game. I was aware of the time slipping away so quickly, like the black road beneath us, and I was hideously afraid that I would never have another chance to be with him like this again. Openly, the walls between us gone for once. His words hinted at an end, and I recoiled from the idea. I'm gonna take out and I recoiled from the idea because it's a little much. I couldn't waste 1 minute I had with him. I'm gonna take that out too. Like, for one, I don't like that she enjoys hanging out with him. But for two, we already got that. Tell me more, I asked desperately, not caring what he said, just so I could hear his voice again. Tell me more, I said. He looked at me quickly, startled by the change in my tone. What more do you want to know? Not bothering to hide the sadness now, if we must. He looked at me quickly, startled by the change in my tone. What more do you want to know? Tell me why you hunt animals instead of people, I suggested, my voice still tinged with desperation. I realized my eyes were wet, and I fought against the grief that was trying to overpower me. Okay. I'm gonna end that there. Actually, I'm just gonna put, I blinked hard to dry my eyes. I'm gonna take out my eyes were wet. I don't want to be a monster. His voice was very low. This is another point where we can put that at the beginning, and then if we end on that dialogue, it's a much stronger line. And we could put when he answered. When he answered suggests that he's finally answering, and also just having more words before he says it indicates a pause without us having to say that he paused, because we already said that a bunch of times. I don't want to be a monster. But animals aren't enough. He paused. I can't be sure, of course, but I'd compare it to living on tofu and soy milk. We call ourselves vegetarians, our little inside joke. It doesn't completely satiate the hunger. I'm gonna take out or rather thirst. There's just something about the tone sometimes that I feel like makes it a less serious interaction than it's trying to be. We call ourselves vegetarians. It doesn't completely satiate the hunger, but it keens us strong enough to resist. Keeps? Most of the time. His tone turned ominous. Sometimes it's more difficult than others. I'm just going to take out than others because I think he meant some times are more difficult than others, because that sentence didn't make sense. Is it very difficult for you now? I asked. He sighed. Yes. But you're not hungry now, I said confidently, stating, not asking. I think the fact that she's saying it makes her sound pretty confident. I'll just put it to I said. Why do you think that? Your eyes. I told you I had a theory. I've noticed that people, men in particular, are crabbier when they're hungry. Why do I feel like they already had this interaction? Did I already edit this chapter? He chuckled. You are observant, aren't you? I swear to God, I've read this already. I didn't answer. I just listened to the sound of his laugh, committing it to memory. Were you hunting this weekend with Emmett? I asked when it was quiet again. Yes. He paused for a second as if deciding whether or not to say something. Okay. How many pauses can we possibly have in one interaction? He's also already looked everywhere. He drummed the wheel. He drummed the wheel with a forefinger and thumb, then gripped it again. I didn't want to leave. So we can just put some kind of action that let us know that he's taking his time answering. We are very limited with what we can do in a car, though. I didn't want to leave, but it was necessary. It's a bit easier to be around you when I'm not thirsty. Why didn't you want to leave? What, do you want to come back in now? Why didn't you want to leave? It makes me anxious to be away from you. I'm going to take out to be away from you because I bet he restates it in the next piece of dialogue. I'm going to end it. His eyes were gentle but intense, and they seemed to be making my bones turn soft. I think I'm just gonna put his eyes were gentle and they turned my bones soft. I wasn't joking when I asked you to try not to fall in the ocean or get run over last Thursday. I was distracted all weekend worrying about you. And after what happened tonight, I'm surprised that you did make it through a whole weekend unscathed. He shook his head and then seemed to remember something. Well, not totally unscathed. What? Your hands, he reminded me. He looked down at my palms, at the almost healed scrapes along the heels of my hands. His eyes missed nothing. We can take out his eyes missed nothing. I fell, I sighed. That's what I thought. His lips curved up at the corners. I suppose, being you, it could have been much worse, and that possibility tormented me the entire time I was away. It's a very long 3 days. I'm gonna take that out. It's just a little much. It's just a little much. It was a very long 3 days. I really got on Emmett's nerves. He smiled ruefully at me. 3 days? Didn't you just get back today? No, we got back Sunday. Then why weren't any of you in school? That's another thing with her dialogue that's difficult to express, but basically she just puts like one too many words, and it's like, people don't talk like that. Why aren't you in school? I was frustrated, almost angry at the thought of how much disappointment I had suffered because of his, like, Jesus, why aren't you in school? I snapped. Well, you asked if the sun hurt me, and it doesn't, but I can't go out in the sunlight, at least not where anyone can see it. I would just say, but I can't be seen in the sunlight. Why? I'll show you sometime, he promised. I thought about it for a moment. You might have called me. I'm gonna take that out. I'm gonna say you could have called. Maybe she'll mumble it. Is this whole chapter just gonna be them in the car? So there is a type of scene that's very important where something happens and then your character has someone to kind of hash it out with. That's a good way to build character relationships and help the reader maybe realize some things that the character's feeling. And then sometimes if it was like a very complicated scene or a really long book, that reflection scene is going to be important to kind of keep the reader like on track with what's happening. But in this book, she rehashes everything with different characters like 6 times. And we also have such a thorough look into what she's thinking that we don't have to get the explanation later. It's like she actually feels like she has to explain everything word for word to these other characters. When you don't have to. We could just know that the conversation happened without seeing it beat by beat. So we're getting the full explanation of Bella's thoughts and feelings during the scene. It's a very simple plot to follow, and then we get a rehash at least 2 or 3 times. So it makes it where there's not actually that much content happening in the book, and something interesting could be happening. I don't think that books have to be constant action the whole time and everything has to be exciting. And we can have those slower moments for character development. That's totally fine. I read so much Jane Austen. But like something interesting could be happening instead of this. We could be having a different conversation. It's just a little tedious, that's all. It's just a little tedious. He was puzzled, but I knew you were safe. But I didn't know where you were. I hesitated, dropping my eyes. What? His velvety voice was compelling. I didn't like it, not seeing you. It makes me anxious too. I blushed to be saying this out loud. He was quiet. I glanced up, apprehensive, and saw that his expression was pained. Ah, he groaned quietly. This is wrong. I couldn't understand his response. What did I say? I'm taking out I couldn't understand his response because she asks right after. Don't you see, Bella? I can already tell this paragraph is going to be great. It's one thing for me to make myself miserable, but a wholly other thing for you to be so involved. I'm going to take out don't you see, Bella, because that's so much. He turned his anguished eyes to the road, his words flowing almost too fast for me to understand. Okay, I'm going to take out the first part of that sentence so I can leave the second one though. So his words flowing almost too fast for me to understand. I don't want to hear that you feel that way. His voice was low but urgent. His words cut me. It's wrong. It's not safe. I'm dangerous. It's wrong. I'm going to take out it's not safe. It's wrong. I'm dangerous, Bella. Please grasp that. Why do you keep hanging out with her? No. I tried very hard not to look like a sulky child. I'm serious, he growled. Why is she in your car, babe? Whose choice was that? So am I. I told you. It doesn't matter what you are. It's too late. His voice whipped out, low and harsh. Never say that. I'm sorry. You're what? 100 years old? I'm 17. Whose car am I in? Did I ask for a ride? I crossed my arms, turned to face the window as far as the belt allowed. Is she 16 or 17? I think she's 17. I'm a teenager. What was I supposed to do? He snapped. Leave you to get hurt? I had it handled, I muttered. Sure. We fell to silence. I stared at the road. We must be close now. He was driving too fast. He was still driving too fast. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice still raw. I just shook my head, not sure if I could speak. I could feel his gaze on my face, but I kept my eyes forward. I'm gonna take that out just because, like, there's nothing wrong with it, but we have heard so much about where they're looking. Are you crying? He sounded appalled. God, I hate him. I hadn't realized the moisture in my eyes had brimmed over. I quickly rubbed my hand across my cheek. I'm gonna take that out because what? Traitor tears were there, betraying me. Shut up. No, I said, but my voice cracked. No, I said, but my voice cracked. I saw him reach toward me hesitantly with his right hand. What if he was reaching with his left? I can make it. I'm gonna take out hesitantly too, because obviously he's hesitating if he didn't actually do it. I saw him reach toward me, but he stopped and placed his hand slowly back on the steering wheel. Take out steering. We know which wheel it is. I'm sorry. His voice burned with regret. I knew he wasn't just apologizing for the words that had upset me. The darkness slipped by us in silence. Dude, I really don't have to change anything after this interaction. It fits right in. The darkness slipped by us in silence. Tell me something, he said after another minute, and I could hear him struggling to use a lighter tone. Yes. What were you thinking tonight just before I came around the corner? I couldn't understand your expression. You didn't look scared. You looked like you were concentrating very hard on something. I'm gonna take out very hard on something. I was trying to remember how to incapacitate an attacker. You know, self-defense. I was going to smash his nose into his brain. I thought of the dark-haired man with a surge of hate. You're gonna fight them? This upset him. Didn't you think about running? I fall down when I run. That's funny. What about screaming for help? I was getting to that part. He shook his head. You're right. I'm definitely fighting fate, trying to keep you alive. I sighed. We were slowing, passing into the boundaries of Forks. It had taken less than 20 minutes. Will I see you tomorrow? I demanded. Yes, I have a paper due too. He smiled. I'll save you a seat at lunch. I don't know which one of them is saying this. It was silly after everything we'd been through tonight, how that little promise sent flutters through my stomach. Okay, no, it was him. And made me unable to speak. Okay, that's a little much. I'll let her have stomach flutters, and that's where I draw the line. We were in front of Charlie's house. The lights were on, my truck in its place, everything utterly normal. It was like waking from a dream. He stopped the car and I didn't move. Do you promise to be there tomorrow? I promise. I considered that for a moment, then nodded. I pulled his jacket off, taking one last whiff. You can keep it. You don't have a jacket for tomorrow, he reminded me. I handed it back to him. I don't want to have to explain it to Charlie. Oh, right, he grinned. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle, trying to prolong the moment. Bella? He asked in a different tone, serious but hesitant. Yes. I turned back to him too eagerly. Will you promise me something? Yes, I said, and instantly regretted my unconditional agreement. What if he asked me to stay away from him? I couldn't keep that promise. I'm going to take that out and just have her regret making a promise with the devil. Don't go into the woods alone. Okay. I stared at him in blank confusion. Why? He frowned and his eyes were tight. His eyeballs are flexing. I'm just going to take out his eyes were tight. He frowned as he stared past me out the window. I'm not always the most dangerous thing out there. Let's leave it at that. Does he think that the werewolves are going to be dangerous? Or other vampires, maybe? I shuddered slightly at the sudden bleakness in his voice. What if she just shuddered? I shuddered, but I was relieved. This at least was an easy promise to honor. Whatever you say. I'll see you tomorrow, he sighed, and I knew he wanted me to leave now. Tomorrow then, I opened the door unwillingly. Bella, we just did this. I turned and he was leaning toward me, his pale, glorious face just inches from mine. My heart stopped beating. Sleep well, he said. I think that I still want to kill him off, so I'm just gonna... I was unable to move until my brain had somewhat unscrambled itself. Then I stepped out of the... Opened the door. I stepped out of the car awkwardly. Having to use the frames for support, I thought I heard him chuckle, but the sound was too quiet for me to be certain. He waited till I had stumbled to the front door, and then I heard his engine quietly rev. I turned to watch the silver car disappear around the corner, realized it was very cold. I reached for the key mechanically, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Charlie called from the living room. Bella? Yeah, Dad, it's me. I walked in to see him. He was watching a baseball game. You're home early. Am I? I was surprised. It's not even 8 yet, he told me. Did you girls have fun? Yeah, it was lots of fun. My head was spinning as I tried to remember all the way back to the girls' night out I had planned. They both found dresses. Are you all right? I'm just tired. I did a lot of walking. Maybe you should go lie down. He sounded concerned. I wonder what my face looked like. I'm just going to call Jessica first. Were you just with her? He asked, surprised. Yes, but I left my jacket in her car. I want to make sure she brings it tomorrow. Well, give her a chance to get home first. Right, I agreed. Went to the kitchen and fell, exhausted, into a chair. I was really feeling dizzy now. I wondered if I was going to go into shock after all. Get a grip, I told myself. Just gonna italicize that and then get rid of I told myself. I might put that on its own line also. The phone rang suddenly, startling me. I yanked it off the hook. Hello, I asked breathlessly. Bella? Hey, Jess, I was just gonna call you. You made it home? Her voice was relieved and surprised. Did she not think that she was gonna... Wait, I'm taking that out. What if she just left her with someone and she didn't know if she was gonna make it out alive? Like, oh, I'm surprised you didn't die. I would have felt a little bad. Yes, I left my jacket in your car. Could you bring it to me tomorrow? Sure, but tell me what happened, she demanded. Tomorrow in Trig, okay? She caught on quickly. Oh, is your dad there? Yes, that's right. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow then. Bye. I could hear the impatience in her voice. Bye, Jess. I walked up the stairs slowly, a heavy stupor clouding my mind. I went through the motions of getting ready for bed without paying any attention to what I was doing. It wasn't until I was in the shower, the water too hot, burning my skin, that I realized I was freezing. I thought you realized that when you were walking inside. I shuddered violently for several minutes. I'm gonna take out violently. I shuddered for several minutes before the steaming spray could finally relax my rigid muscles. Then I stood in the shower, too tired to move, until the hot water began to run out. Hot water ran. I'm just gonna say until the water ran cold, right? I stumbled out, wrapping myself securely in a towel, trying to hold the heat from the water in so the aching shivers wouldn't return. Just gonna take out that part. I dressed for bed swiftly and climbed under my quilt, curling into a ball, hugging myself to keep warm. Okay, well, we already know that's your goal. A small shudder trembled through me. My mind still swirled dizzily, full of images I couldn't understand, and some I fought to repress. Nothing seemed clear at first, but as I fell gradually closer to unconsciousness, a few certainties became evident. About 3 things I was absolutely positive. This is my favorite part. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how potent that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. So when I get to parts that are just very iconic and memorable, I wonder if I should leave them as is. I'm definitely going to make this its own paragraph. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how potent that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. What would I do if I did want to change it? Take the whole thing out? I don't know. Okay, well, I'm leaving it at that. If you want to read the edited versions, I send out the PDFs in my newsletters, so you can sign up with the link in the description. Thank you for watching. If you want, you can like and subscribe and hit the notification bell because I upload every Thursday. And thank you so much to my patrons for sponsoring this video. You guys are cute. I'll see you next week. Bye.